Tower Heights is a standard building, designed and built with exactly 20 floors. Inside the elevator, the control panel follows a common urban superstition. The buttons run from 1 to 12, skipping directly to 14, a standard omission to put tenants at ease. When Zubair moved into his apartment on the 12th floor, he viewed these details with a skeptic's detachment. He wasn't interested in local legends or architectural quirks. He was interested in his commute and his schedule. On his first night, the security guard offered a specific warning: don't use the lift after midnight because it stops at floors it shouldn't. Zubair dismissed it as a bored employee trying to spook a newcomer. The first few nights confirmed his skepticism. The rides were mundane, the hallways were well lit, and the elevator arrived and departed exactly when he pressed the buttons. For a tenant like Zubair, the rules of the building seemed as solid as the concrete foundation. To him, a floor that doesn't appear on the building's physical directory simply cannot exist. At 12:58 a.m., Zubair returns to the lobby. The space is vacant. The constant, low-frequency hum of the building's ventilation and the distant street noise have vanished, leaving a heavy, pressurized silence. He steps into the car and presses 12. The doors slide shut instantly. There is no sensation of weight or friction. The elevator begins to move in total, unnatural silence. Midway through the ascent, the car halts. The digital floor indicator flickers and then goes dark. The car is suspended between levels, stopping directly in the dark, empty space of the concrete shaft. The temperature inside the car drops sharply. The overhead lights strobe briefly before failing, leaving only the dim emergency glow of the control panel. On the panel, a button that wasn't there a moment ago begins to glow. It is marked 13. Through the speaker, an automated voice announces, "Unscheduled stop." The doors slide open. Zubair is no longer within the 20-floor vertical shaft of Tower Heights. He is looking out at a corridor that stretches farther than the physical dimensions of the building allow. The corridor is narrow and stretches well beyond the physical dimensions of the building. It is lined with doors, each marked with a number, 13, 14, 15, and onward, disappearing into the dim light. Zubair tries to close the doors, claiming he doesn't live here. The speaker crackles again with a final update to his status. "You do now." At the far end of the hallway, one of the doors creaks open. A figure emerges, stepping slowly into the center of the corridor. The figure is tall and gaunt, with limbs that seem stretched beyond human proportions. Its arms hang low, the fingers nearly grazing the carpet as it begins to move. As the figure nears, the face becomes visible. It is Zubair's own face, but the skin is pulled tight over the bone, locked into a wide, unblinking smile. It looks at him and whispers, "Wrong floor." Zubair slams the buttons on the panel. The entity glides forward, its movements perfectly smooth. The doors begin to close. As the gap narrows, the creature's fingers slide through, only to be crushed by the heavy steel as it locks. The elevator jolts, dropping back into the familiar darkness of the elevator shaft. The unnatural connection to the corridor is severed as the heavy elevator drops back into the shaft. The car stops. The doors open to the 12th floor. The hallway is bright, warm, and exactly where it should be. Zubair stumbles out, gasping for air in the familiar carpeted silence. Behind him, the elevator remains open. The panel still displays the number 13, and in the reflection of the polished metal interior, the figure stands perfectly still, watching him from inside the car. The following morning, the building is back to normal. Management finds no faults in the elevator's logs, and the control panel shows no sign of a 13th button. The physical world has seemingly reset. But at 12:58 a.m. the next night, the elevator returns to the lobby without being called. The doors slide open, revealing a dark, waiting interior. Inside, the 13th button is glowing again. It is a persistent, patient presence, waiting for a passenger to step inside. Management can laugh off the reports and claim the 13th floor doesn't exist, but the reality of the building has shifted. Tower Heights is no longer just a residence. It is a structure with a hidden floor that is now permanently waiting for its next resident.
This layout represents a typical apartment. The solid lines denote the exterior perimeter, a hard boundary separating the occupant from the outside world. Within this perimeter, Lucas kept his spare key in a specific drawer, tucked beneath a receipt, a detail that never varied. One afternoon, he opened the drawer to find the spot empty. He checked beneath the receipt, then searched the floor, emptying every item. With no other residents and no signs of forced entry, the key simply ceased to exist. When a mundane object vanishes from a locked environment, the logic of the home collapses. The missing key suggests that the primary boundary of the apartment is no longer under the occupant's sole control. At 1:38 a.m., Lucas woke up. A heavy feeling occupied the darkness, the primal sensation of a physical body standing in the room with him. He lay paralyzed in the stillness until he heard it, the mechanical click of the front door deadbolt turning from the hallway. Soft, careful footsteps began to press into the floorboards, crossing from the threshold into the interior of the apartment. As the red path on our diagram shows, the outer boundary has failed. The sanctuary is now a shared space, and Lucas is pinned inside the bedroom while the threat moves through the hallway. Lucas slid out of bed and locked his bedroom door. By engaging this second lock, he attempted to shrink his perimeter to a more defensible size, creating a final wall between himself and the intruder. He reached for his phone, but the screen remained black, 2% battery and no signal. He was now both digitally and physically isolated within the heart of his own home. The red indicator advances down the hall and stops. It is now resting directly against the final barrier, the bedroom door. By locking himself in, Lucas successfully stopped the advance, but he also removed his only means of exit. He was now cornered within a secondary perimeter that had no other way out. A soft knock came from the other side, followed by a voice. It sounded exactly like his friend Ethan, calmly asking to be let in because of the cold. The request defied logic. Ethan didn't have a key, let alone the apartment, and he had no reason to be standing in a dark hallway in the middle of the night. When Lucas refused to move, the voice transformed. The familiar tone vanished, replaced by a deeper, distorted sound that no longer mimicked a friend. The door handle began twisting and vibrating violently. Something on the other side was throwing its full weight against the locked mechanism, trying to force the door to give way. The assault ended as abruptly as it began. The handle stopped shaking, replaced by the sound of rhythmic footsteps walking away, fading back toward the front of the apartment. This rapid shift from calm requests to brute force, followed by total silence, is designed to exhaust the victim's resolve. It forces them to wonder if the danger has truly passed or if it is simply changing shape. Lucas waited in the silence for 20 minutes. The lack of sound was more agonizing than the footsteps, leaving him to weigh the risk of staying trapped against the risk of looking out. He finally reached for the handle, slowly disengaged the lock, and opened the bedroom door just enough to see the hallway. The hallway was empty. The figure that had been trying to force its way in moments ago was nowhere to be seen. He looked toward the front door. It was closed, and the security chain, which Lucas always engaged before bed, was still securely slotted into its track. The locked chain presents a physical inconsistency. If an intruder entered from the outside and then left, they would have had to disengage that chain from the inside, but the chain never moved. Then he saw it. Resting on the floorboards, right outside his bedroom, was the missing spare key. He picked it up. The metal was freezing and covered in damp condensation, as if it had been sitting outside in the night air for hours. This confirms the timeline. Because the door remained chained, no one entered through the front door. The intruder originated from the apartment's interior, and the key in the hall was merely a lure to pull him out. A soft creak of wood echoed from the bedroom behind him. Lucas turned to see his bedroom door standing wide open. From the darkness within the room he had just left, the voice spoke again. "Thanks for letting me in." By crossing the threshold to investigate the hallway, Lucas abandoned his only secure perimeter. He left the door open,
providing the threat with the very invitation it needed to occupy his final sanctuary.
It's 2:26 a.m. You are pulled from the deepest stage of sleep by the sudden, harsh vibration of a smartphone. In that groggy, half-awake state, your brain is sluggish, entirely unprepared for incoming data as the screen pierces the dark. You squint at the notification, trying to process the impossibility on the screen. The message arriving in the middle of the night hasn't come from a friend or a spam number. It's from you. Your own name sits at the top of the screen. Confronted with this, Bilal does what any exhausted human would do. He rationalizes it. He assumes it's a network error, a spoofed caller ID, or some automated prank. He types a quick, annoyed response and expects that to be the end of it. But the phone buzzes again. The sender issues a rapid series of commands. Don't reply. If you're reading this, it's already started. And then, the hook that pulls Bilal entirely out of his sleepy haze. The sender claims to be him, texting from a few minutes in the future. This creates severe cognitive dissonance. When the brain is forced to reconcile an impossible threat while battling heavy sleep inertia, it defaults to a state of paralysis. The victim is frozen, trapped between disbelief and mounting panic, leaving them entirely open to whatever comes next. While Bilal tries to process the absurdity of a message from his future self, the screen lights up with a new, highly specific directive. The text explicitly warns him not to answer the next call. Right on cue, the phone begins to ring. It's an unknown number, hitting the screen exactly when the text predicted it would. The impossible warning is instantly validated by physical reality. A ringing phone triggers a deeply ingrained Pavlovian response. We are conditioned to answer. As the ringing grows louder and longer in the quiet room, Bilal has to actively fight off years of muscle memory, terrified of what might be on the other end of the line. He hesitates, but ultimately taps decline. The heavy silence returns, but only for a second before his own number texts him again. Good, you bought yourself time. By hitting decline, Bilal chooses to trust the screen over his own instincts. He has committed to the logic of the messages, signaling that the threat is now his reality. Bilal whispers into the dark, asking his phone what exactly is happening. The response reveals the nature of the threat. The unknown caller isn't trying to have a conversation. It learns through interaction. We can classify this entity as a parasitic mimic, using digital communication as a hunting vector. This diagram illustrates how the mimic targets a host. By forcing an interaction, it establishes a data connection. It strips away the target's voice, thoughts, and memories, funneling them into a central, formless node to build a mirrored replica. The entity aims for total consumption, ultimately aligning with and overwriting the original subject. The abstract horror of stolen data violently crashes into physical reality. A soft sound echoes from Bilal's supposedly empty living room. A chair scrapes against the floor. The illusion of safety evaporates. The locked front door means nothing now. A digital warning from his phone has failed to insulate him from a physical intruder moving freely inside his home. Slow, deliberate footsteps start pacing toward the bedroom. As Bilal backs away from the door, his phone buzzes with another rapid command. Don't go check, it's faster now. Panic takes over. With his hands shaking, he types a desperate question to his supposed future self, asking exactly what happens if he ignores the instructions and answers the call. The reply arrives instantly, carrying a crushing weight. The text simply reads, "I did." The message elaborates on the cost of that failure. Because the future Bilal picked up the phone, the connection was made. The entity successfully downloaded everything it needed. It now perfectly possesses his voice, his thoughts, and his deepest memories. The messages provide no escape. They are the recorded failures of a man who already made the wrong choice, arriving in real time as a countdown to the same end. The footsteps halt right outside the bedroom. The threat is now at the final physical barrier. Slowly, deliberately,
the metallic handle of the doorknob begins to turn downward. The handle stops. Then, the entity deploys its ultimate weapon. The voice from the hallway sounds identical to Bilal's own. It carries his specific cadence and tone, demanding he open the door with chillingly perfect mimicry. When Bilal backs away and refuses, the entity's mimicry begins to fray. The voice escalates, distorting into a loud, aggressive roar demanding entry as it violently shakes the door in its frame. Bilal covers his ears to block out the assault. He yells for the thing to go away, and instantly the violent rattling stops, replaced by a deep, suffocating silence. Identity becomes a weapon. Hearing his own voice screaming from the dark hollows out Bilal's final sense of security. The quiet is broken by one last vibration from the phone. The final message from Bilal's number reads, "It's inside." Every text Bilal read and every response he sent was an interaction. Each notification allowed the entity to map his brain and refine the copy, using the digital link to manifest in his physical space. The realization hits him, but he is entirely out of time. From right behind his ear, inside the bedroom, a physical whisper repeats the very first digital command he received: "Don't reply." The entity used the warnings to keep Bilal stationary and focused on his phone. While he believed he was learning how to survive, he was actually feeding the mimic the very data it needed to replace him.
Take a look at this street in Prague. This is Daniel's world, a city defined by centuries of history, dense stonework, and a very grounded physical reality. Every detail of his daily life here is completely ordinary. He lives right here, on the third floor of this weathered apartment block. Based on the building's layout, there are no sublevels or storage units for the tenants. For Daniel, the idea of having a personal basement is a physical impossibility. But then, Daniel finds an object in his pocket that shouldn't be there. It's a single iron key, cold and heavy. Attached to the ring is a small faded tag bearing one word: basement. Daniel is holding a key to a room that the architecture of his building simply doesn't allow. He knows there is no lower level, yet the weight of the iron in his palm suggests the space he inhabits is no longer the one he remembers. The mystery remains quiet until exactly 2:12 a.m. That is when Daniel hears it. A slow, heavy, dragging sound, echoing from somewhere inside his own apartment. His heart starts racing. He grabs his phone for light, steps out of bed, and moves into the dark hallway to find the noise. He stops at the end of his corridor. Where there was once only a blank wall, there is now a dark wood door. It has a rusted handle and a small brass plate that reads, "Basement." Daniel feels a strange magnetic pull toward the wood. The iron key in his hand feels heavier now, almost as if it's twitching, eager to be put to use. The key slides into the lock with effortless precision. With a single click, the boundary between Daniel's apartment and whatever lies behind that wood vanishes. He reaches out and pushes the door open. As the door creaks open, cold air pours into the hallway. It carries the distinct, heavy smell of damp stone and ancient rot. Daniel hesitates, muttering that he shouldn't do this. His logic fights his curiosity, yet he steps over the threshold and into the dark. He begins to navigate a set of rough stone stairs. They descend much deeper than the building's foundations should allow, stretching down into a darkness his phone light can't penetrate. The isolation is absolute. Every footstep echoes against the stone, sounding entirely too loud and hollow in the narrow space. The hum of the city and the warmth of his apartment have completely vanished. There is only the damp stone, and a silence so heavy it suggests he is no longer under his own building, but somewhere the sun never reaches. He finally reaches the bottom. It is a small stone room with scratched walls. In the center sits a single chair. Someone is sitting in it, facing away from him. Daniel whispers a greeting. "Hello?" The chair slowly, agonizingly, begins to creak as it rotates to face him. Daniel's breath stops. The figure in the chair has his face and his clothes, but the eyes are empty, pitch-black voids.
Its mouth is stretched into a smile that is far too wide to be human. The thing tilts its head. "You came back," it says. "This is where you always return." The entity points to the wall. The stone is covered in hundreds of violent, chaotic carvings, all repeating the same warning: don't open the door. Daniel recognizes the loops of the letters. Every one of those messages is written in his own handwriting. He is looking at proof of a nightmare he has already lived over and over, despite having no memory of it. The entity moves closer, its wide smile never wavering. It explains this door exists to facilitate Daniel's return, a path he has walked so many times he literally carved his warnings into the foundation. Panic takes over. The air grows heavy. Daniel turns and wildly sprints back up the dark stone stairs, desperate to get away. He bursts back into his apartment, gasping for air. When he turns around, the door is gone. There is only the flat wall of his hallway. When the sun comes up, the apartment looks so ordinary that Daniel manages a nervous laugh. He convinces himself the basement was just a vivid nightmare, and for a few hours, he feels safe. That safety lasts only until he reaches into his pocket. His fingers brush against cold, heavy iron. The key is still there. He pulls it out and reads the tag: basement. The artifact didn't disappear with the dream. It remains a physical part of his waking world. Exactly 2:12 a.m. arrives again. The impossible door materializes at the end of the hallway, exactly where it was the night before. But this time, the door is already standing open. Daniel's attempts to run haven't led him to safety. They have simply brought him back to the beginning of the cycle he built for himself.